approach, connoisseurs of tales, to the banquet of Skinwalker Legacy, where stories are served with the delicacy and richness deserving of StoryWave.ai's craft. Feast with us by liking, sharing, and subscribing for a new delicacy every day. Chapter 1: An Uncanny Evening. I've always been one to rely on empirical evidence, and yet the allure of the inexplicable drew me like a moth to a flame. The tales emanating from Skinwalker Ranch were too compelling to ignore: cattle mutilations, cryptic symbols, and orbs of light that danced with an intelligence of their own. They beckoned me, not with the promise of fame, but with the siren's call of the unexplained. My rucksack slung over my shoulder, I made for the door, and Tarek, the quartz necklace around my neck, pulsating with a faint luminescence. It was a curious artifact, one that seemed to resonate with the mysteries I pursued. Some said it was a mere bauble. I believed it to be something more, a talisman of sorts. The drive to the ranch was a solitary one. The night was clear, stars splashed across the celestial paint on an obsidian canvas. The vastness of it all, the universe stretching into infinity, made my quest seem insignificant, yet it was this very enormity that fueled my thirst for knowledge. I reflected on past cases, haunted estates, spectral apparitions, voices from beyond that were heard but never seen. Each had its rational explanation, yet the ranch, it was a different beast altogether. As I approached the gates of Skinwalker Ranch, the air seemed to thicken, charged with an invisible energy. The reports had been clear. Strange phenomena were afoot here, more so than any other place I had investigated. I parked, stepped out of the car, and was greeted by the arid scent of the Utah desert. The ranch itself was an unassuming piece of land, sprawling and desolate, but as I walked the perimeter, my senses sharpened. There was a feeling here, a vibration beneath the soil, beneath reason. I set up a base camp near what locals called the UFO hotspot. It was there the majority of sightings had occurred, and it was there I would begin my vigil. As the night deepened, I initiated my equipment and scanned the environment. The usual signs of wildlife were all but absent, replaced by an ominous silence. I recorded my observations, speaking into the voice recorder. Jeremy Snow, 22 hours, no significant readings yet. The atmosphere is charged. Hours passed with little to disturb the stillness. It was during these moments of quietude that I often pondered the nature of existence. Was I a man chasing phantoms or a seeker on the verge of profound discovery? My thoughts were interrupted by a crackle over the radio. "Jeremy, you out there staring at the stars again?" The voice belonged to Eleanor Wise, my mentor of sorts, her tone always tinged with both skepticism and wonder. "Ellie," I replied, my hand instinctively reaching for the necklace. "The stars are clearer than ever tonight. If there's something to be seen here, I'll find it." Her chuckle was a wisp of sound over the airwaves. "Just remember, the universe doesn't give up its secrets easily. Keep your wits about you." I assured her I would before signing off. It was then, in the solitude of the high desert, I felt the weight of my task. Unseen eyes seemed to watch from the darkness, ancient and knowing. I could not have foreseen how this evening would unfurl into an odyssey beyond my wildest conjectures. In the distance, the land undulated with the contours of the earth, an interplay of shadow and moonlight. I could sense it, the precipice upon which I stood, the threshold of discovery. And as the night wore on, I was certain of one thing. Skinwalker Ranch held a secret, one that I was destined to unveil. The steady rhythm of the night was a prelude to the extraordinary, and I, Jeremy Snow, was but a note in its grand composition, ready to play my part in the unfolding legacy that awaited. Chapter 2: The Glowing Stone. I stepped out into the cool air, the ground beneath my feet crunching softly. My breath formed fleeting clouds that dissipated into the night. The ranch was an eerie tableau, a place where the veil between worlds felt perilously thin. I approached the rock formation, the necklace around my neck beginning to emit a soft glow, a buoy in the dark. The rock's surface was etched with carvings, unfathomable symbols that predated any known language. I reached out, an involuntary action driven by some primal curiosity. The moment my fingers grazed the stone, the air around me shivered with energy. "Ah, I see you found the heart of the ranch," a voice called out from behind me. I turned to find Eleanor, her frail form silhouetted against the starlight. She leaned on her blackthorn shillelagh, her eyes reflecting the stone's newfound luminescence. "Eleanor, what is this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She drew closer, her deep blue eyes locked onto the glowing quartz around my neck. "This ranch holds more than just stories of the paranormal, Jeremy. It's a crossroad of sorts, a place where worlds intersect." As she spoke, the air around the carvings began to warp, the atmosphere thickening, twisting into a vortex that pulled at the very fabric of reality. The necklace pulsed in time with the burgeoning portal, a heartbeat syncing with an ancient rhythm. "Touch the stone again, Jeremy," Eleanor urged, her voice now a commanding whisper. "Your necklace is the key. It always has been." My hand moved as if of its own volition, pressing against the cold, carved surface. The earth trembled beneath us, and a brilliant light exploded from the rock, enveloping me, drawing me towards an unfathomable depth. "Remember, Jeremy," Eleanor's voice reached me as if from a great distance, "what you're about to witness is a legacy that has chosen you. Trust in the journey." The world spun, and I was thrust through the veil, hurtling towards an unknown destiny. The last thing I saw was the ranch, a fleeting image that faded as I passed into the luminous maw of the portal. In that moment, all my skepticism, every doubt I had ever harbored, was challenged by the undeniable reality of the impossible. Ahead lay a path shrouded in mystery, a journey of discovery that beckoned with the promise of revelation and the peril of the unknown. As the light consumed me, I realized that this was no longer a mere investigation. It was an odyssey that would redefine the boundaries of my world and the very essence of my being. The stone's glow was a herald, and my adventure was only just beginning. Chapter 3: The Demonic Pursuit. I, Jeremy, had never known fear like this, an icy claw that gripped my insides and commanded my feet to flee. Without conscious thought, I was sprinting back to the jeep, the ancient rock and the creature it birthed fading into the night. The drive home was a blur, my thoughts a roar of terror and disbelief. The reality I had known was a lie. The veil had been lifted, and I had peered into the abyss that lay beyond. I slammed the door to my home, the safety of walls and locks a flimsy shield against the horrors that now hunted me. The clock ticked past midnight, the world outside my window silent, but for the whisper of wind through the trees. The creature, I believed, could not follow me here. Yet the air grew heavy, a sense of dread pooling in the pit of my stomach. A tapping at the window shattered the silence. I turned, heart thundering, to see a shadow outside the glass, a shape too grotesque to belong in this world or the next. The creature had found me. The phone rang, tearing through the tension. I snatched it up, the voice of my mentor Eleanor offering a lifeline in the madness. "Jeremy, it's Ellie. Tell me you're safe." Her voice was steady, but beneath it lay an undercurrent of urgency. I recounted the night's events, each word punctuated by the tap, tap, tap on the window. "You must go back, Jeremy," she said, her tone resolute. "This creature, this demon, it is not just a random specter. It's a sentinel, a guardian of thresholds. You've been chosen for a reason, and turning your back now would be—" "I can't, Ellie," I interrupted, the words spilling out in a torrent. "You didn't see it. It's madness to think I could face that abomination again." There was a pause, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer, laced with a wisdom born of years delving into the arcane. "Jeremy, in all my years, I've learned that some things must be faced, not for the sake of curiosity, but because they are a part of us. You have a role in this legacy, and this creature, this pursuit, it's the universe demanding you accept your destiny." The tapping intensified, the creature growing more insistent as Eleanor's words echoed through my mind. It was the call to adventure I had always sought, now turned into a clarion of dread. The line went silent, and I was left alone with the demon at my door. The night stretched on, an eternity of waiting, until the first light of dawn filtered through the curtains. As the light grew, the presence outside waned, retreating back into whatever hell had spawned it. With the morning sun casting long shadows across the room, I understood what must be done. The fear lingered, but beneath it lay a decisiveness I had not known I possessed. This was my pursuit, my journey, not just to confront the creature, but to confront the very fabric of reality and my place within it. The ranch called to me, an enigma that could not be abandoned. I would return, not as the hunted, but as the hunter, ready to face whatever lay beyond the portal. The demonic pursuit had become my own, and I would see it through to the end, whatever that may be. Chapter 4. Eleanor's Enlightenment. Eleanor greeted me in her usual scholarly attire, her silver hair a coronet of wisdom framing her deeply lined face. The scar on her cheek seemed to pull tighter as she smiled, a physical memory of her own encounters with the inexplicable. "Jeremy," she said, her voice a whispery echo of strength, "you look like you've seen a ghost, or something far worse." "As close to the gates of hell as I ever want to get," I replied, my attempt at levity falling flat. She guided me into her study, a haven of knowledge where I hoped to find solace or at the very least understanding. We sat across from each other, her eyes scrutinizing me, seeing beyond the facade of the investigator to the turmoil within. "You've been to the ranch," she stated, not a question, but a declaration. I nodded, recounting the events at the rock, the awakening of the portal, and the creature that had seemingly attached itself to my very soul. Eleanor listened, her face a mask of contemplation, her fingers tracing the contours of her shillelagh. "The carvings you described," she began, her voice steady, "they are more than mere markings. They are a language, one that speaks of a prophecy, ancient and powerful." I leaned forward, my heart hammering with a mix of dread and intrigue. "A prophecy? What does it say?" Eleanor rose, moving with a purpose to a towering bookcase. She retrieved a tome, so old it seemed the mere act of opening it would cause it to crumble to dust. She returned, laying the book gently on the table between us, and carefully turned the brittle pages until she found what she sought. "The prophecy speaks of a time when the barriers between worlds will weaken, and a chosen one will emerge to seal the breach," she said, her finger tracing the cryptic symbols on the page. "It says the chosen one will bear a sign, a light against the darkness." My hand went to the quartz necklace, its once comforting glow now a forecaster of a destiny I was reluctant to accept. "Eleanor, this is madness," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm no chosen one. I'm just a man who looks for answers to questions that most are afraid to ask." She regarded me with a gaze that cut through pretense. "Jeremy, you have always sought the truth, no matter the cost. This is no different. The truth you search for now is of a kind that can alter the course of history, of reality itself. Your encounters, your experiences, they have led you to this moment." I shook my head, the weight of her words like stones in my stomach. "And what if I refuse? What if I turn away from this calling?" "The prophecy does not compel," Eleanor replied softly. "It offers a path, one that requires a courage not just to believe in the supernatural, but to stand as a bulwark against it." We sat in silence, the gravity of our conversation hanging between us like a shroud. The conflict within me raged, a tempest of fear and responsibility, of the desire for a normal life pitted against the sense of duty Eleanor's words instilled. "You must make a choice, Jeremy," Eleanor said, breaking the silence. "But know this, the portal you've opened, the creature you've encountered, they are but the beginning. The legacy of Skinwalker Ranch is yours to uphold or to abandon. The prophecy will unfold with or without you." Her words resonated, a call to arms that I could no longer ignore. The refusal of the call was a luxury I could not afford, not when the very fabric of our world was at stake. As I left Eleanor's home, the ancient tome tucked under my arm, I knew that my journey back to the ranch was inevitable. The portal, the creature, the glowing quartz, they were all threads in a litter I was destined to weave. The enlightenment Eleanor had offered was not just of the mind, but of the spirit, and I would need both if I was to confront the legacy that awaited me. Chapter 5. The Reluctant Hero. The quartz, once a mere trinket dangling from my neck, now throbbed with a pulse that matched the racing of my heart. This stone was my lodestar, guiding me towards a destiny that the rational part of my mind still balked at, even as I accepted its inevitability. I had spent hours poring over texts and sketches, the arcane symbols from the rock formation matched with Eleanor's aged tome. Each glyph was a piece of a larger puzzle, one that spelled out my involvement in a prophecy that seemed to have chosen me without consent. The creature from the portal loomed large in my mind, its formless terror a stark reminder of what awaited me. But the deeper terror, the one that gnawed at my very soul, was the possibility of turning away, of living with the knowledge that I had cowered when the universe itself had called my name. It was then Anubis appeared, his presence a confluence of shadow and substance. Jeremy, he intoned, his voice the timbre of shifting sands, your hesitation is a luxury the world can ill afford. I studied his sinewy form, the tattoos aglow with an otherworldly light, and I found my voice. How can I face what lies beyond? I am no warrior, no mage. I am a man who seeks answers, not battles. The greatest battles are often those fought within, Anubis replied, his golden eyes holding mine. You possess a strength yet unrealized. The courage to seek is the same courage required to confront. His words were a balm to my frayed nerves, and I felt the last vestiges of my resistance begin to crumble. And if I fail, I asked, the question hanging between us like a sword of Damocles. To embark on this journey is already a victory, he said, a cryptic smile playing upon his lips. The outcome is not for us to decide. The room seemed to grow smaller, the walls pressing in as the moment of truth approached. I closed my eyes, the faces of those I held dear flashing behind my lids. This step, this journey, was not one I could take lightly, for it was a path from which there could be no return. With a heart laden with trepidation, I made my way back to Skinwalker Ranch, the place where the fabric of reality had first frayed for me. The desert sky was a canvas of twilight hues, the setting sun painting the horizon with strokes of fire. Eleanor was there to meet me, her presence a stalwart against the encroaching night. Jeremy, she greeted, her eyes searching mine. Are you prepared? As I'll ever be, I responded, the weight of the quartz around my neck grounding me. We stood before the ancient rock, the portal quiescent, waiting. Eleanor placed a withered hand on my shoulder, her touch surprisingly firm. Remember, Jeremy, whatever you find on the other side, know that you carry with you the hopes of all who have sought to pierce the veil of the unknown. With a nod, I stepped forward, the glyphs on the stone pulsating with anticipation. I reached out, the quartz responding with a brilliance that outshone the dying day. The air cracked with potential, the portal yawning wide like the maw of some great beast. I cast one last glance at Eleanor, her figure a guidepost of resolve, and stepped through. The transition was a maelstrom of color and sound, a tempest that buffeted me with the winds of eternity. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the tumult ceased, and I was standing in a world untouched by time, an ancient landscape that stretched out before me, both wondrous and terrifying. This was my crucible, the challenge I could not forsake. The reluctant hero had crossed the threshold, and the quest for knowledge had truly begun. Chapter 6: A Land Beyond Time. I had scarcely a moment to marvel at the surreal beauty of it all when I was beset by a discord of alien cries. In the distance, a skirmish raged, a whirlwind of figures, human and otherwise, locked in a dance of chaos. My initial instinct was to retreat, to find safety in the shadows of the towering rocks, but the quartz around my neck pulsed with a warmth that spoke of purpose. I was drawn to the conflict, as if the stone itself willed me to bear witness. As I approached, the figures became clear. Benevolent skinwalkers, their forms shifting fluidly from man to beast, were besieged by creatures that seemed ripped from the darkest of myths, a horde of shadowy entities, their features twisted with malice. One of the skinwalkers, a towering figure whose eyes bore the fierceness of a predator, fell back from the fray, retreating to where I stood. His eyes met mine, a silent plea etched within their golden depths. Stranger, he spoke, his voice a guttural growl that softened as his form settled into that of a man. I am Talon, and my people are in peril. Will you aid us against these fiends? I was unaccustomed to such encounters, my world of paranormal investigation ill-preparing me for the tangible reality of ancient warfare. Yet the backbone that Eleanor had ignited in me left no room for hesitation. Talon, I replied, gripping the quartz pendant as if it were the hilt of a sword, I stand with you. Together, we plunged into the maelstrom, Talon's shape-shifting kin rallying at the sight of our united front. The battle was a blur of primal fury and elemental magic, a spectacle that would have defied belief in my own time. As we fought, Talon's voice cut through the din, his words a guide amidst the bedlam. Aim for their eyes, the windows to their dark souls. His advice was as good as any, and I found myself adapting to this surreal combat, targeting the creatures with an accuracy born of necessity. The shadow beings recoiled from the light emanating from my necklace, a landmark that seemed to burn them more than any physical wound. The tide turned. the shadowy horde diminishing under our relentless assault, until at last they retreated, vanishing into the ether from whence they came. The skinwalkers roared in triumph, their voices echoing across the savannah. In the aftermath, as the dust settled, the skinwalkers regarded me with a newfound respect. Talon approached, his manner reverent. "You have fought bravely, Jeremy. You carry the light of the ancients, and in doing so, you have earned our trust." The other skinwalkers murmured in agreement, their forms a blend of human and animal, a pledge to their mystical nature. "You have my gratitude," I said, the adrenaline of battle giving way to the realization of what I had just experienced. "But I must understand more. Why did those creatures attack you?" Talon's expression grew somber, his eyes reflecting the stars that began to pepper the twilight sky. "They are the lost ones, beings who have succumbed to the darkness between worlds. Our fight against them is eternal, a balance that must be upheld lest this world and yours fall into ruin." His words painted a stark picture, one where the line between ally and enemy was drawn not by borders or allegiance, but by the very essence of one's soul. The ancient world was a crucible, and trust was a currency as valuable as it was dangerous. As night enveloped the land, the skinwalkers led me to their enclave, a place where the magic of their kind thrived. It was here, under the canopy of an ancient sky, that I would learn more of my role in the prophecy and the tests that lay ahead. The reluctant hero's journey was far from over. It was merely the beginning of a quest that would challenge the very foundations of knowledge and reality. Chapter 7: The Guardian's Test. His form was both majestic and terrifying, a towering figure wrapped in the aura of the eternal desert, his eyes like twin suns set in a countenance that held the wisdom of the ages. Today, he was not just the guardian of the portal, he was the arbiter of my fate. "Jeremy," Anubis addressed me, his voice deep and resonant, echoing the rumble of distant thunder. "You have shown courage in the face of darkness, but the true test of a hero lies not only in the strength of his arm, but in the commitment of his heart." His words were a clarion call, a summons to a trial I felt ill-prepared for. I drew a deep breath, fortifying myself against the tremor of apprehension that threatened to betray my outward calm. "What must I do?" I asked, my tone steady despite the tempest of doubts swirling within. Anubis's gaze bore into me, as if he sought to peer into the very marrow of my soul. "3 trials await you, each designed to test a facet of your being. Your physical strength, your intellect, and your moral compass will be scrutinized. Only by passing these trials will you prove your worthiness to fulfill the prophecy." The guardian stepped aside, revealing a path that led to a trio of archways, each carved with the intricate symbols that spoke of trials ancient and formidable. I approached the first archway, the stone pulsing with an energy that beckoned me to enter. As I passed beneath the arch, the landscape shifted. I found myself standing at the edge of a chasm, a narrow bridge of rope and planks, the only passage across the abyss. The trial of strength. I was to cross without succumbing to the void below. With each step, the bridge swayed, the creaking of the ropes a sinister whisper that promised descent into oblivion. Yet I pressed on, calling upon every reserve of fortitude, every memory of trials already overcome. When at last I reached the other side, my breath came in heavy sighs, but my spirit soared with triumph. The second archway transported me to a chamber where hieroglyphs danced upon the walls, a riddle of the ancients that demanded a solution. The trial of wit. I was to decipher the message hidden within the stone. Time seemed to stretch and bend within that chamber as I studied the symbols, their meanings, elusive and profound. Pondering each glyph, I pieced together the puzzle, an epiphany dawning upon me as the final piece fell into place. The chamber opened, revealing the path to the final trial. The last archway was a gateway to a scene of moral ambiguity. 2 figures stood before me, one cloaked in light, the other in shadow. The trial of morality. I was to choose whom to trust, a decision that bore the weight of consequence. Their words were a symphony of persuasion and deceit, each argument a thread in an oddment of ethical complexity. It was a test of judgment, of the ability to see beyond appearances to the truth that lay hidden within. My decision made, the figure cloaked in shadow dissipated like mist in the morning sun, the choice revealing the duplicity that had lurked beneath the guise of darkness. Anubis reappeared, a nod of approval etching his features. You have faced your inner demons and emerged with the clarity of purpose. The trials are complete, but your journey is far from its end. As the guardian spoke, the archways faded, the landscape returning to the familiar vista of the Skinwalker's enclave. I stood taller, a sense of accomplishment and commitment, steeling me for the challenges yet to come. You have proven your commitment, Jeremy, Anubis continued. Now, you must carry forth the legacy that has been bestowed upon you, for the fate of this ancient world, and your own, rests upon your shoulders. The trials I had endured were but a prelude to the odyssey that awaited, a testament to the strength, wisdom, and morality that would guide me through the uncharted waters of prophecy and destiny. The Guardian's test had been a crucible, one that had forged me into an instrument of the legacy I was destined to uphold. Chapter 8: The Prophecy's Edge. Talon's voice, tinged with the gravity of our predicament, broke the silence that had settled among us. The alignment of the heavens approaches, a convergence that will strengthen the barrier between the worlds. And if this barrier solidifies while I am still here? I asked, the implications dawning upon me with chilling clarity. Then you, along with all the knowledge and power you carry, will be trapped, Talon said, his gaze unwavering. More than that, our enemies will be free to wreak havoc, unchallenged by the light you bear. I nodded, processing the magnitude of our task. This was no longer merely a personal quest for understanding. It was a battle for the very soul of existence, a crusade that required the unity of all who stood for the sanctity of life and light. I will need your help, Talon, and the aid of your kin. We must rally the allies of old, those who still hold a flicker of hope in their hearts, I declared, my tenacity hardening like steel, tempered in the forge of necessity. Talon's response was immediate and decisive. We will stand with you. The tribes, the elemental spirits, the ancients, all will heed the call. You have shown us a path, Jeremy, and we will follow. In the hours that followed, messengers were dispatched on the winds, their forms shifting through the ether, spreading the word of the coming confrontation. The enclave became a hive of activity, a war council of the most extraordinary kind, a gathering of beings both human and ethereal. A council fire blazed at the heart of the enclave, its flames a voucher to the urgency of our cause. Around it, allies of every shape and creed convened, their faces a mosaic of determination and fear. We stand at prophecy's edge, I began, addressing the assembly. The enemy we face is unlike any other, born of the darkest recesses between worlds. But together, we wield a power that can turn the tide. A murmur of assent rippled through the crowd. Among them was Sylph, a being of air and light, her form barely contained within the semblance of flesh. The wind whispers of your bravery, Jeremy. It carries tales of a light that can banish the darkness. We will lend our strength to your cause. A nod of gratitude was my only response as I turned to the next, a figure clad in the earthen armor of the land itself. Golem, his voice the deep rumble of the earth, spoke next. The stone and soil, the very bones of this world, stand ready to defend against the encroaching shadow. From the multitude of voices, a plan began to take shape, a strategy born of necessity and the collective will to survive. The ancient civilization that had welcomed me into its fold would now look to me for leadership, an honor that I bore with a sense of sacred duty. As the council dispersed, preparations for the coming confrontation began in earnest. Weapons were forged from elemental forces, fortifications rose from the land, and warriors of every ilk trained with a fervor that bespoke their understanding of the stakes. In the quiet moments before the dawn, I stood alone at the edge of the enclave, looking up at the stars that continued their inexorable march toward alignment. The prophecy's edge was sharp, and we were poised to strike or fall upon it. The plan to unite the factions of the ancient world in a final standoff had been set in motion. Now, as the first light of morning crested the horizon, it was up to us to ensure that when the stars aligned, it would not be a requiem for the light, but a symphony of victory. Chapter 9: The Apex of War. Talon stood by my side, his form a towering testament to the power of our united tribes. Today we fight not just for our survival, but for the very fabric of existence, I proclaimed, the words cutting through the charged air. A war cry rose from the throes of our assembled force, a sound that would stir the heart of any being that held freedom dear. Across the field, the enemy, a legion of shadows and malice, stood in glaring disparity to our resolve. At their vanguard was the warlord, a being whose very presence seemed to leech the light from the sky. Talon's eyes met mine, his nod imperceptible. Your powers have grown since you embraced the legacy, Jeremy. It's time to show them in full. I grasped the quartz pendant, feeling its pulse synchronizing with the life force of all who stood with me. The battle commenced with a fury, the air alive with the clash of metal, illing, the cries of the valiant, and the roar of magic unleashed. As the lines of combat ebbed and flowed like the tides of an ocean storm, I found myself at the heart of the maelstrom, the Skinwalker powers within me awakening to their fullest extent. With each enemy felled, my confidence grew, a crescendo that echoed the rising hope of our forces. Then, as fate would have it, I stood face to face with the warlord. His armor was a litter of darkness, his eyes two voids that promised oblivion. You cannot stop what has been set in motion, interloper, he bellowed, his voice a gale that threatened to sweep me away. I stood my ground, the quartz glowing bright against the darkness. I am Jeremy, and I stand for this world and mine. Your reign of shadows ends today. Our duel was a clash of ideologies made manifest. Each strike a debate, each parry a rebuttal. The warlord was strength and fear incarnate, but I wielded the light of knowledge, the blade of understanding, sharpened by my journey through trials and tribulations. Sylph swept through the ranks, her form a blur of motion as she turned the tide in our favor. Golem's rumbling voice called forth the very stones to rise and defend, each boulder a bastion against the dark. The warlord unleashed a maelstrom of power, a dark tempest that threatened to engulf me. Yet, as the vortex closed in, I focused on the light of the quartz, channeling its energy into a shield that parted the darkness like a ship cleaves the waves. With a final resonant cry, I thrust forward, the pendant's light coalescing into a lance of pure radiance that pierced the warlord's armor. He staggered, a look of disbelief etched into his features as the light spread, consuming him in a conflagration of luminescence. As the warlord's form dissipated like shadows at dawn, a silence fell upon the battlefield. The enemy forces, leaderless, began to wane, their commitment crumbling like ash in the wind. We had prevailed, not by might alone, but by the unity of our cause and the strength of our conviction. As my allies gathered around, their faces weary yet alight with victory, I knew that this was but the apex of our war, a pivotal moment upon which the future would unfurl. The prophecy's edge had been blunted, the celestial event held at bay by our actions this day. The ancient civilization that had become my charge would live to see another dawn, and the legacy that had chosen me would continue to be written in the documentation of both our worlds. Chapter 10, The Sacrifice and the Portal. Talon, his own scars worn like badges of honor, approached me with a solemnity that belied the recent triumph. Jeremy, you've led us to prevail, but the stars wait for no one. The celestial event draws near. I knew what he spoke of, the alignment that would seal the portal and decide my fate. The weight of the decision pressed upon me, a burden that was mine alone to bear. Eleanor once told me of the importance of choice, I began, my voice steady though my limbs trembled with fatigue. I stand at the precipice, Talon. To stay here is to carve my essence into the bedrock of this world, to become a part of history, a memory. And to leave, Talon interjected, his gaze piercing the gathering dusk, is to return to a life that you know, with all its comforts and certainties. I turned my gaze to the portal, its glow a lodestar against the encroaching night. The quartz around my neck pulsed in response, a heartbeat that mirrored my own. Sylph appeared beside us, her form barely contained, a shimmering visage of the air itself. Jeremy, your presence here has altered the currents of this world. Your sacrifice would be the anchor that ensures the continuance of all. Golem's rumbling voice joined the chorus, the very ground echoing his emotion. The foundation you have laid here is more than stone. It is the bedrock of the future. Their words were a clarion call to the hero I had become. Yet within me, the man I once was yearned for the life I had left behind. A figure emerged from the shadows, Anubis, the enigmatic guardian whose presence had guided me to this moment. Jeremy, he said, his voice the desert wind, the choice is yours, but know this. The threads of fate are a ragbag woven by actions, not by hesitations. The light of the portal grew brighter, a sign of the impending alignment. I moved toward it, each step a lifetime, each breath a whisper of the lives that had intersected with my own. Whatever you decide, Talon said, his hand on my shoulder, you have become a part of us, a brother in arms, a lodestar of hope. I nodded, my choice crystallizing like the first frost upon the winter ground. My journey began with a search for answers, for the truth behind the veil. I found that truth, not in the seeking, but in the sacrifice. Turning to face my companions, my friends, I offered a smile, the gesture belying the gravity of my next action. This world, your future, it's worth every moment I forfeit in mine. With those words, I stepped forward, the quartz flaring to life, its light a crescendo that met the portal's glow. The celestial bodies aligned, and the fabric of the portal pulsed, ready to mend. In that instant, I thrust the pendant into the heart of the portal, the light enveloping me, consuming me, my essence fueling the closure that would safeguard the timeline. The last thing I saw was the faces of those I had come to call kin, their voices a symphony that carried me into the embrace of eternity. And then there was peace, a serenity that knew no bounds of time or space. My sacrifice sealed the portal, ensuring the survival of a civilization that history would never remember I had touched. As for my own existence in the saga of modern history, it was a small price to pay for the legacy that would continue in the whispers of the wind, the strength of the stone, and the courage of the skinwalkers. The story of Jeremy was at its end, but the Skinwalker legacy would live on, an eternal testament to the power of choice and the valor of the human spirit. Chapter 11, The Hero's Farewell. Around me, the air was rich with the scent of roasting meats and fresh herbs, a feast prepared to celebrate the victory, a victory that bore my imprints as much as those who now hailed me as a hero. Talon approached, his regal bearing commanding the attention of all present. Today, we honor a man who came to us from beyond the stars, a man who became our brother, our champion. I nodded solemnly, accepting the mantle of honor with a complex brew of emotions. The ceremony unfolded, a pageant of ancient rites and songs that were both alien and achingly beautiful. As the tributes were spoken, I caught glimpses of Sylph, her form radiating with the joy of the living breeze, and Golem, his stoic visage softened by the glow of the bonfires. The elders of the tribe stepped forward, each bestowing upon me symbols of their gratitude. A feather from the skykin, a vial of sacred earth from the earth tribe, and a flask of water from the river folk. These were not mere trinkets but embodiments of their worlds, and now of mine. As the sky darkened, a skinwalker elder with a voice that seemed to carry the wisdom of the ages addressed me. Jeremy, you have done what none before could. You've bound your spirit to our destiny, and in doing so have become immortal in our lore. I felt the eyes of the assembly upon me, their reverence a heavy cloak. I did what I believed was right, I replied, my voice barely more than a murmur against the chorus of the celebration. Though I may never walk the paths of my own world again, knowing that yours will thrive brings me a peace I could not have found elsewhere. The elder smiled, a gesture that crossed the boundaries of time and species. Your sacrifice will be remembered as long as the stars burn in the night sky. Come, let us rejoice, for today we are all kin, bound by the courage and light you have shared with us. The festivities continued far into the night, the revelry a symphony of life and triumph. Yet, amidst the jubilation, there was a part of me that grieved, the part that longed for the familiar, for the touch of a world I had left behind. I found myself wandering away from the fires, drawn to the now dormant portal, a silent sentinel of my choice. The night was clear, the stars a brilliant canopy overhead, each one a world, a story, a life that I had once been a part of. You've given them a future, Jeremy, a familiar voice said from the shadows. Anubis emerged, his figure both a comfort and a reminder of the irrevocable. My throat tightened as I turned to face him, and in doing so I've surrendered my past, my own future. It's a strange feeling, Anubis, to be untethered from everything you once knew. The guardian placed a hand on my shoulder, his touch grounding. You've gained something too, Jeremy, a legacy that will outlive us all. You've become a bridge between what was and what will be. His words settled over me like the first snow, cold but pure. Perhaps, I conceded, in time, I will come to see it as you do. Anubis nodded, his eyes reflecting the cosmos. Time has a way of healing even the deepest of wounds. Your deeds here will ripple through the ages, and though you may not walk among your own people, your story will be told in the wind, the earth, and the water. You are part of the grand ragbag now, forever woven into the fabric of this world. I looked up at the sky, finding solace in the constellations that watched over us. Then let the stars be my witness, and this world my legacy. For in the end, we are all but stardust, scattered across the cosmos, seeking our place in the grand design. The night embraced us, the hero's farewell, a silent accord between guardian and warrior, between the past and the eternal present. As the fires burned low and the music faded, I knew that my journey had not ended. It had merely transformed, and I with it. Chapter 12, Echoes of the Lost. I found myself walking the perimeters of the enclave, a silent sentinel ever watchful for the residue of malice that might seek to dismantle the serenity we had sown. Talon joined me, his strides purposeful and measured. Jeremy, the air smells of change, and though the sun sets on a day without bloodshed, the night may yet bear teeth, he murmured, casting a glance at the gathering shadows. I nodded, my senses attuned to the undercurrent of unease. Peace can be as fragile as a spider's web, Talon. We must be as vigilant in preserving it as we were in fighting for it. As we patrolled the edge of the enclave, the stillness was shattered by the faintest sound, a whisper of movement, a shadow detaching itself from the darkness. Instinct took hold, a remnant of the adrenaline that had fueled me through battles past. In a fluid motion, I drew the blade given to me by Golem's kin, its edge catching the last rays of the dying sun. The figure halted, cloaked in the anonymity of twilight, but there was no mistaking the intent that radiated from its stance. "Who goes there?" I demanded, my voice steady as the ground beneath our feet. A moment's hesitation, then a hiss of steel as the figure lunged, a blade aimed with lethal precision. Talon and I moved as one, combatants bound by shared purpose. The assailant was skilled, but desperation lent our defense an edge that could not be blunted. In the scuffle, Talon's voice rang clear. "Remember, Jeremy, the enemy has many faces, and not all are as easily read as those we've vanquished before." The truth of his words struck as keenly as our blades. The struggle was fierce, but brief. With a deft maneuver, I disarmed the assailant, revealing the face of a disciple of the fallen warlord, eyes burning with the embers of vengeance. "Why do you seek to spill blood on soil that has only just begun to heal?" I asked, my gaze fixed upon the would-be assassin. The disciple spat, a venomous sound. "The master's will transcends his mortal coil. His disciples shall carry forth the torch of his legacy, and you, interloper, shall not stand in our path." I held the disciple's stare, a silent battle of wills. "Your master's reign is ended, his legacy crumbled to dust. The future is not written in the blood of tyrants, but in the determination of those who stand against them." With the disciple secured and the immediate threat quelled, the enclave stirred into action. The peaceful facade momentarily disrupted. Sylph materialized, her visage troubled. "Jeremy, the winds carry murmurs of unrest. This attack, it is but a foretoken of the storm that seeks to reclaim the skies." Talon grunted, his eyes scanning the horizon. "Then we shall be the bulwark against that storm, sister of the winds." Jeremy's actions have not only preserved the peace of today, but have reaffirmed his place as the guardian of all our tomorrows. The enclave's leaders convened, and in the glow of the council fires, plans were laid to ensure the safety of the realm. As I stood before them, the weight of the mantle I bore was palpable, yet the determination that had carried me through the trials of the past bolstered my spirit. "We will not yield to the specters of bygone tyranny," I declared, my voice rising above the crackle of the flames. "The peace we have forged is a hodgepodge of our collective wills, and it shall not be unraveled by the hands of a few who cling to the shadows." The gathering murmured their assent, a chorus of determination that sang of unity and the strength that comes from shared conviction. As the stars took their posts in the night sky, a sentinel watch that mirrored my own, I knew that the echoes of the lost would continue to reverberate against the walls we had built. Yet as the guardian of this realm, the vanguard of the prophecy I had fulfilled, I would stand firm. For every whisper of vengeance that sought to breach our defenses, there would be a shout of defiance to meet it. This was the risk and the reward of the hero's journey, a constant vigil in the name of a peace that was every bit as vital as the blood that had been shed to achieve it. Chapter 13. The Legacy Unfolds. Talon, with the bearing of a chieftain, approached me. His stride spoke of battles won and wisdom earned. Today, we honor the one who came as a stranger, but now stands as a guardian of our people, he announced, his voice resonating with the authority of one who had led his kin through the fire of war and the quiet of peace. I nodded, the gravity of the moment settling upon me like the mantle I would soon bear. I came seeking answers to questions that haunted me, I said, my voice carrying across the gathering crowd. But I found a purpose that was larger than any single query. The assembly of skinwalkers and their allies fell silent, their attention absolute. Among them I spotted Sylph, her ethereal beauty a sharp distinction to the solidity of Golem, who stood like a sentinel carved from the very earth. An elder stepped forward, her silver hair a cascade of living history. Jeremy, you have proven yourself not only in the theater of battle, but in the realm of the heart. Today, we bestow upon you the title of Skybound Watcher, a title reserved for those who protect our world from the shadows. The title, Skybound Watcher, resonated within me, a name that echoed with the power to transcend time and be uttered for generations to come. I am honored, I said simply, feeling the weight and warmth of the title like a cloak around my shoulders. As the skinwalkers began their ancient chants, the rhythm of their voices a shuffle of sound, I felt my spirit intertwine with the land and its people. This was no longer a foreign place, but a part of my very essence. Sylph floated to my side, her voice a melody that seemed to harmonize with the wind. You have anchored your soul to this land, Jeremy. Your legacy will be as enduring as the breeze that shapes the dunes. Golem's rumble followed, a grounding force, and as steadfast as the stone that rises from chaos. Your deeds are the foundation upon which we will build a new order. The ceremony concluded with the gifting of symbols, a feather, a stone, and a vial of water, each representing the elements and my bond to them. I accepted these gifts, not as mere tokens, but as sacred totems of my commitment to stand with the skinwalkers in safeguarding the peace. In the days that followed, I worked alongside the leaders to establish a new order. The skinwalkers, once solitary guardians, now emerged as the architects of peace, their knowledge and abilities shaping the policies that would govern interactions among the multifaceted tribes and beings of this land. At the forefront of this new order was the Council of Elements, a gathering of representatives from each tribe and faction. I sat among them, not as a ruler, but as an equal, my voice one among many that sought harmony and understanding. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of fire and shadow, I found myself walking the boundary of the enclave with Talon. The peace we enjoy now is a fragile thing, I mused, my gaze tracing the line where light fought against the encroaching darkness. Talon nodded, his eyes reflecting the first stars of the evening. True, but it is a peace made stronger by your presence, Skybound Watcher. The stories of your bravery and sacrifice will be told by the fireside, from parent to child, for as long as the stars grace the night. His words struck a chord within me, a realization that my journey had indeed become a legacy, one that would endure in the hearts and minds of those I had come to love. Though I had left behind one life, I had found another, rich with purpose and interwoven with the lives of those I now called family. As the first stars appeared, I knew that my tale was not one of loss, but of transformation. The echoes of my past life would always be with me, but they were joined by the songs of the skinwalkers, the whispers of the wind, and the silent strength of the earth, a symphony that would play on through the ages, a legacy unfurled. Chapter 14, The Unraveling Threads. Talon, his visage etched with concern, stood beside me, his eyes also fixed on the heavens. It seems the universe isn't done with us yet, Jeremy, he said, his voice carrying the weight of unspoken fears. I nodded, my mind racing through the possibilities. We faced down darkness and forged peace from the embers of war. But this is a challenge of a different sort. The very skein of time is in jeopardy. The gravity of our predicament hung in the air between us, a palpable force that demanded action. We had fought so hard to protect the timeline, to ensure that history would remember the Skinwalker legacy as one of triumph, not tragedy. As we contemplated our options, Sylph appeared, her form fluttering in and out of solidity like a mirage. The river of time is swelling its banks, threatening to flood the present with the waters of what could have been, she said, her voice a lilting cadence that belied the seriousness of her words. Golem's rumble emerged from the shadows, a counterpoint to Sylph's ethereal tones. We must shore up the banks, bind the river once more to its course. Jeremy, you've learned much from us. Do you possess the knowledge to mend what is tearing asunder? The question was like a spark to dry tinder, igniting a blaze of determination within me. I have an idea, I began, my mind's eye, envisioning the interwoven strands of time and space. The portal's closure was but a temporary fix, a stitch in the fabric, but there may be a way to fortify it, a way to manipulate the event to our advantage. Sylph and Golem exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them before they gave me their nod of assent. Then we shall lend our strength to yours, Talon declared, his voice carrying the resolution that had seen us through countless trials. The Enclave became a flurry of activity as the plan unfolded. Every being, every tribe came together in a unified front, their collective will focused on the task at hand. The Skinwalkers, with their profound connection to the elements, took the lead, their chants and rituals a resonant force against the unraveling threads of time. I joined them, drawing upon every lesson they had imparted, every truth I had uncovered in my journey among them. With each word spoken, each symbol etched into the ground, I could feel the fabric of time growing taut, the cosmic event bending to our collective will. As the night deepened, a silence fell upon the land, pregnant with anticipation. Then, without warning, the sky erupted in a cascade of colors, auroras painting the darkness with hues of green and violet, a visual symphony that heralded the success of our endeavor. We have done it, I breathed, my voice steady but awed. The timeline is preserved. Talon clasped my shoulder, his touch firm and reassuring. You have done it, Jeremy. Your journey, your legacy, has become the linchpin upon which our future swings. You are more than a hero. You are the guardian of our realm's very existence. The celebration that night was subdued, a reflection of the trials we had endured and the knowledge of how close we had come to the brink. Yet beneath the somber tones, there was a current of joy, of pride in what we had achieved together. As I lay down to rest, the stars now gentle sentinels in the quiet sky, I realized that my hero's journey was nearing its end. But in its place, a new chapter was beginning. A chapter where the Skinwalker legacy and my own were forever intertwined, echoing through time as an attestation to the power of belief, unity, and the indomitable human spirit. Chapter 15, The Immortal's Burden. A soft rustle of fabric drew my attention to Sylph, who approached with the grace of the zephyrs that answered her command. Her eyes, ever changing like the sky itself, met mine with a knowing look, one that spoke of shared burdens and unspoken understandings. Jeremy, she began, her voice harmonizing with the sigh of the wind. You have become a legend, but legends are not without their trials. How do you fare with the weight of immortality? Her inquiry, though asked with a gentle candor, struck at the core of my being. To be undying is to be unyielding, I replied, my gaze drifting to the horizon where sky met earth in an eternal embrace. The knowledge of all I have lost, my time, my people, my past, it is a heavy mantle. But within it I have found a sense of purpose that transcends my own story. We walked together, our path lined with the verdant flora that had witnessed the rise and fall of empires. You have given us a future, Jeremy, Sylph continued, her form shimmering with the dance of sunlight through leaves. And in doing so, you have woven your spirit into the very fabric of this realm. Her words, meant as comfort, did little to assuage the longing for a life I once knew. Yet as we traversed the gardens, the laughter of children at play, and the murmur of conversation between the tribes filled the air, reminding me of the lives that thrived because of my sacrifices. It was Talon who found me later, his silhouette framed against the backdrop of the setting sun. The evening draws near, and with it the time for reflection, he said, his tone imbued with the gravitas of one who has seen the rise and fall of countless moons. I nodded, welcoming his presence. Reflection? yes, but also a time for inscription. The Skinwalker legacy, our legacy, must be chronicled for those who will one day look upon these days as the distant past. Talon's expression softened, a rare occurrence for one who often seemed as steadfast as the mountains themselves. Then come, Jeremy. The Council of Elements has prepared a place for you, a sanctum where you may pen the chronology of our age. Together we made our way to the heart of the enclave, where a structure of stone and timber awaited, its architecture a corroboration to the unity of the tribes. Within its walls lay scrolls of parchment, quills, and inks of every hue, the tools with which I would craft the narrative of the realm. As I settled before the blank scrolls, the silence of the sanctum enveloped me, a cocoon from which the story of the skinwalkers would emerge. My hand moved of its own accord, guided by memories and visions that demanded to be given life upon the page. The hours waned, the sanctum becoming a vessel for the echoes of history. My tale, once a solitary sojourn, now spanned the breadth of an epoch, intertwining with the lives and legends of those who called this realm home. And so I wrote. I wrote of battles and peace, of darkness and light, of the rise of the skinwalkers and the fall of their foes. I wrote of my own journey, from seeker to guardian, from man to myth. In the stillness of the sanctum, I found a semblance of peace, a reconciliation with the immortal's burden I bore. The knowledge that my story would endure, that it would inspire and guide, became a solace that tempered the sting of eternity. Through the chronicles I penned, the Skinwalker legacy would echo through time, a corroboration to the indomitable will of those who stand in defense of their world. And as the last light of day gave way to the embrace of twilight, I, the skybound watcher, embraced my eternal role, finding victory not in the fleeting triumphs of life, but in the everlasting impact of a legacy preserved for all who would follow. Chapter 16, Transcendent Return. The eternal figure I had become, a guardian between the veils of worlds, found solace in the duty that stretched before me like the unending horizon. Around me, the ancient world thrived, a welter of life and lore that was as much a part of me now as the very air I breathed. Talon, ever the steadfast companion, joined me in my contemplation. His presence was a comfort, a reminder of the kinship that transcended time itself. You've become a myth, Jeremy, a story we tell our young ones as they gaze up at the stars in wonder, Talon said, his voice carrying the timbre of the earth, deep and enduring. I turned to him, the corners of my mouth lifting in a wistful smile. And what do you tell them? I inquired, genuine curiosity threading my words. We tell them of the skybound watcher, the man who came from beyond, who fought alongside the skinwalkers and shaped the destiny of all, he replied, a note of pride coloring his speech. We shared a companionable silence, our gaze lingering on the horizon, where the land met the sky in a seamless embrace. The tranquility of the moment was a clear-cut difference to the storms we had weathered together. The threads of time are secure, and the balance holds firm because of your sacrifice, Talon continued, his eyes scanning the skies, ever vigilant. You've created a haven for the future, a legacy that will shield them from the tempests that may come. His words were a balm to the part of me that still mourned the life I had left behind. There is a part of me that will always yearn for the world I knew, for the flow of time that was my birthright, I confessed, the admission hanging in the still air between us. Yet you've chosen a path that speaks of a courage few possess, Talon said, his gaze returning to mine. You've embraced the burden of eternity to protect not just one world, but two. It was true. The peace that enveloped the land was of my making, a peace that I had woven from the very fibers of my being. I could not return to my own time, but in this ancient world, I had found a purpose that transcended personal longing. My actions had prevented untold suffering, and that knowledge was the elixir that sustained me. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with a palette of fiery oranges and purples, I allowed myself a moment of reflection. Here, in the quiet of the twilight, I found peace in the knowledge that the legacy I had crafted would endure through the ages. The stories told by the fireside, the whispers of the wind, and the steadfastness of the stone all bore my mark. I may have left a world behind, Talon, But I've gained a universe, I said, my voice no more than a whisper carried on the evening breeze. And if my tale inspires but one soul to rise above their fears, to reach for greatness against the odds, then my journey is complete. The stars began to appear, one by one, a celestial audience to the closing of my tale. And as night embraced the world, I stood resolute, the skybound watcher, a signal of hope and an eternal protector of the legacy that was the Skinwalker's and now mine. In this ancient world, I had carved out my victory through perseverance. And though the threads of my life had unraveled from one oddment to be rewoven into another, the design that took shape was one of triumph, of a destiny embraced and a future secured. For in the heart of every ending lies the promise of a new beginning, a transcendent return to the essence of what it means to truly live and to leave a mark upon the cosmos that endures for all time. The end. It's been an honor to have you with us for Skinwalker Legacy. StoryWave AI has the unique gift of turning your prompts into engrossing tales. Please leave a like, share with your circle, and subscribe to our channel for a new story every day. April 2024, until our paths cross again.